I recently did something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I sat down and rewatched every episode of The Twilight Zone. And you know what? Somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't watching the same series that I remembered. The fantastic stories were still there. The strange characters, they're all still here. The twist endings, just as clever as I'd remembered. But this time, I found myself paying attention to different things, different conversations, different characters, different moments. It wasn't because the episode had changed. It was because I had. Some stories have a funny way of doing that. They don't really change over the years. We do. So today, I want to share 10 episodes of The Twilight Zone that revealed something new to me when I watched them again. And if you haven't revisited these episodes in a long time, you might be surprised by what you see too. Quick heads up before we start. If you haven't seen these episodes yet, consider this your spoiler warning. Now, let's get into it. This one isn't ranked among the series' greatest episodes, but when I watched it again, I noticed something. I appreciated it more. We open on a dusty road outside the burned out remains of a southern plantation, just after the Civil War has ended. A wounded Confederate sergeant stops to rest and take a drink of water. The sergeant, he's very patient with Lavinia. He doesn't argue. He doesn't push her to face the truth. He just sits there listening, quietly playing a song on his homemade guitar, one that reminds her of her late husband. Near the end of the line, Lavinia's husband appears among the passersby. It's only then that you completely understand where this road is leading. When I first watched this story, I saw it as anti-war. It was moving, sure, but it was something that happened to other people a long time ago. When I watched it this time, though, I didn't see a story about the Civil War at all. I see people coming to terms with the inevitable, the knowledge that one day, every one of us will walk down that same road. Let's talk about the hunt for a minute. When I first watched this episode many years ago, it didn't really register that much with me. I mean, it was an okay little story. It was a touching little story about an old backwoods couple living in a cabin. I never really put it on my must rewatch list though. I thought it was a bit slow back then. Didn't have much of a twist at the end. It was pretty predictable. But when I watch it now, I have a different view. In it, we're introduced to Hyder Simpson. He's a mountain man who's been married to his wife Rachel for 50 years. They share their cabin with Hyder's beloved hunting dog, Rip. One night, while out raccoon hunting, Rip chases a raccoon into a deep stream. And Hyder, well, he wades in after him, trying to save his dog. The next morning, they both wake up and head for home. But something seems off. This is the Twilight Zone, after all. No one seems to see or hear them. But slowly, Hyder starts to realize what happened, and the road ahead of him turns out to be a very different journey than the one he expected. Along the way, Hyder is offered a choice, one that tests exactly what kind of man he is, and exactly what he's willing to walk away from. I really appreciate the slow pace of this episode now, and the warmth between Hyder and his wife of 50 years. I also love how much this episode understands loyalty. Hyder's love for his dog Rip isn't just sentimental. It's the whole point of the episode. Let's talk about static a little bit here. It was written by Charles Beaumont, who was a regular writer for The Twilight Zone. He wrote classics like The Howling Man, Long Distance Call, and Shadow Play. It's another episode that I didn't really think much about when I first saw it, but this time through, it really got to me. In it, we're introduced to Ed Lindsay, who's a bitter, aging bachelor, living in a boarding house full of other older residents. They all spend their evenings zoned out in front of the television. Disgusted with the mindless programs, Ed digs out his old radio out of the basement and sets it up in his room. Somehow, It's still picking up broadcasts of Tommy Dorsey and old radio shows from the 30s and 40s. The catch, of course, is everyone he's hearing is long dead, and the radio station went off the air years ago. When Ed tells the other boarders, none of them hear anything but static. They start to worry about his sanity, especially Vinny, another resident who was once engaged to Ed decades earlier. And that's what really stayed with me this time. It isn't really about the mystery of the broadcast. It's about Ed letting Vinny back into his life for one more chance at something he thought was long gone. In another story by Charles Beaumont, Kevin McCarthy is great here playing Walter Jameson, a beloved history professor whose lectures feel personal. He's engaged to Susanna, the daughter of college professor Sam Kittredge, but Kittredge has noticed something. In the 12 years they've known each other, Walter hasn't aged a day. When he confronts Walter, Walter finally admits the truth to Sam, that he's over 2,000 years old, kept alive by a strange gift from an alchemist long ago. And he's lived under countless names and countless lives ever since. In a Twilight Zone twist, an elderly woman arrives at Walter's door. Turns out it's one of Walter's abandoned wives from decades earlier. She spent a lifetime hunting him down. That confrontation finally forces a reckoning with what centuries of outliving everyone you love actually does to a person. At first, I thought this was a clever twist on immortality. The kind of episode where the gift turns out to be a curse, and the ending delivers the shock you'd expect. When I see it now, I see a deeply lonely man who's had to bury everyone he's ever cared about, over and over, for 2,000 years, until there was nothing left of him worth loving. This one's all about the desire to be young again, to be out of pain, to have unlimited energy. That's what Mr. and Mrs. John Holt want. Who doesn't? In this universe, people can trade in their aging bodies for new, younger ones. For a price, that is. For the Holts, the price is more than they have. The procedure costs $5,000 per person, and the Holts only have enough saved for one. John is suffering from constant pain, and the years ahead don't look kind to either one of them. So what do? Well, John tries and fails to win the difference in a backroom poker game. And at Marie's urging, he agrees to take the new body alone, so he can eventually earn enough to bring her along too. He emerges from the procedure young, healthy, and pain-free, and almost immediately realizes that he can't stand the thought of Marie growing older without him at her side. The first time I watched this, I saw it as a nice bit of speculative fiction, an interesting what-if about technology and mortality, with an ending I knew was coming. But now I understand it completely. Youth without the person you shared your whole life with isn't a gift, it's a sentence. This was always one of my favorite episodes. Lou Bookman is a 60-something sidewalk pitchman, loved by every kid on the block for his little toys and his infectious charm. One hot July afternoon, a well-dressed man shows up and introduces himself as Mr. Death, informing Lou that his time is up at midnight. Lou, being a lifelong salesman, tells Mr. Death that he's never made a pitch for the Angels, the one great sales pitch of his career, and begs for more time to finally deliver it. Death agrees to his request, letting Lou believe he's outsmarted him completely. But then Lou finds out that someone still has to die at midnight, and Death just chooses someone else. It turns out to be Maggie, a little girl in Lou's building, who's hit by a truck and left in a coma. Lou realizes the bargain isn't about him anymore. As Death arrives to collect her soul at the appointed hour, Lou has only one move left: to stall Death himself with the pitch of a lifetime. Yes, it's one for the Angels. This one hits differently now that it's not just about Lou's clever way to cheat Death. You see, Lou's bargain wasn't just a free get-out-of-death card. Someone else had to pay for his bargain. I see it now as a story about what a person is willing to give up for someone else once their time on Earth actually starts running out. This one is a great fantasy piece by Serling with a very dark ending. Garth Williams is an advertising executive being attacked from every direction. A boss who berates him in front of the whole office. A cold and status-hungry wife who has no patience for his problems. And a growing sense that he was built for a gentler pace of life, other than the one he's living. On the train home each night, exhausted, he starts drifting off and dreaming of a place called Willoughby. It's a warm, sunlit little town stuck in the summer of 1888, where people know his name, and nobody is in a hurry. Each night the dream goes a little further, until Garth is finally standing right at the edge of the platform. When the pressures of his real life finally become unbearable, he makes a choice that blurs the line between escape and something more permanent. And the closing image of the episode makes clear just how steep the price of reaching Willoughby really was. Watching it now, I see a man who is drowning in plain sight. What bothers me the most is how ordinary Garth's exhaustion looks from the outside, and that no one really notices or tries to help him. This episode shows how easy it is for a person to disappear inside a life that they no longer want, and how most people don't ever notice until it's too late. Now here's another story centering around Mr. Death. We meet Wanda Dunn, an old woman living alone in a dark, condemned basement apartment. She refuses to ever leave or let anyone in because she's convinced that Mr. Death is out there somewhere, waiting to take her the way she once watched him take another woman with nothing more than a touch. One winter morning, a young police officer is shot right outside her door and begs her to let him in. After an agonizing internal struggle, Wanda finally drags him inside, and the two form an unexpected bond as she nurses him and slowly starts to trust him. But when a contractor arrives to condemn the building and to move her out, Wanda realizes that he can't see or hear the policeman at all. She finally understands the truth. He's been Mr. Death all along, sent in a gentler disguise to earn her trust. This episode gave me a chill the first time I saw it. The slow reveal, the twist you don't see coming until it's already happened. But now, I can feel Wanda's exhaustion, the toll of spending a life barricaded against something you can't ever keep out. What moves me now is Mr. Death's kindness. The idea that whatever's waiting on the other side of that door might not be the enemy at all. Just someone patient enough to hold your hand until the fear finally lets go. In this episode, we meet Professor Ellis Fowler, who has spent 51 years teaching English literature to boys at the Rock Springs School, and takes a deep, quiet pride in every lesson he's given. Just before Christmas break, the headmaster informs him that he's being forced into retirement. Fowler goes home devastated, convinced that despite 5 decades of work, he never actually changed a single life or made any real difference in the world. In his darkest moment, he decides to end his life and returns to the empty campus on Christmas Eve to do it. Before he can go through with it, though, a phantom bell calls him back to his old classroom, where the ghosts of 7 former students, several of whom died young, appear to tell him one by one exactly how his teaching shaped the men and the choices that came after him. I thought this was a simple holiday morality tale, a sentimental story for teachers, but now it hits somewhere much deeper. I understand Fowler's fear in a way I just couldn't before. The fear that whatever you gave your life to somehow didn't make any difference at all. I now realize that we rarely get to see the full ledger of our own influence while we're still adding to it. Most of us never get Fowler's classroom scene. We just have to trust that the lessons have landed somewhere. And now for my top pick. You probably saw this one coming. Martin Sloan is a burned-out New York ad executive, 36 years old, and exhausted by the relentless pace of city life. On a Sunday drive out of the city, he pulls into a gas station only a mile and a half from Homewood, the small town where he grew up, and he decides to walk the rest of the way in. What he finds there is Homewood exactly as it was decades earlier. Same soda fountain prices, same bandstand, same summer evening light. Because Martin has somehow walked straight back into 1934, into the middle of his own childhood. He seeks out his parents, who understandably think he's crazy, and he tries to reach his 11-year-old self at the carousel, an encounter that ends in an accident. It's only in a quiet conversation with his own father that Martin begins to understand what he was really chasing and why he can't stay. I like this episode as a wistful little time travel fantasy, a nice sentimental idea about wanting to go home again. But watching it now, I feel it the way I think Serling himself must have felt writing it. This one isn't about time travel. It's about the ache of wanting to reach back and tell a younger version of yourself to slow down, to notice the merry-go-round, to know how good he actually has it. And now I understand exactly what Martin's father meant when he told him there's only one summer for every customer, and that the trick isn't getting back to it, it's learning how to carry it with you. So that's my list. 10 Twilight Zone episodes that mean more to me today than they did the first time I watched them. Going back through the entire series reminded me that great stories don't stay the same. We don't stay the same. Sometimes all it takes is a few more years, a few more experiences, or just seeing life from a different angle before an episode suddenly speaks to you in a way that it never did before. That's one of the reasons The Twilight Zone has lasted for more than 60 years. The twist endings are still great. The science fiction ideas, they're still fascinating. But underneath all of that are stories about people. And those stories have a way of finding us when we're ready for them. Maybe they've been waiting for us to catch up to them all along. Now I'd love to hear from you. Is there a Twilight Zone episode that means something different to you today than it did the first time you saw it? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to Rerun Zone for more classic television, science fiction, and the stories behind the shows we still love all these years later. Until next time, this is Rich from Rerun Zone. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.